Hey everybody, welcome back to Enhance and Distract, episode number 55. Today we have a special guest. His name's Kevan Grinwis. Me and Sean talk with him, or Sean and I whatever, someone's going to correct me on that. We talked to him about more of the leadership role between techs and leadership, making decisions, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit longer of a podcast than what we normally do, but the conversation was just so good, we had to kind of like forcefully cut ourselves off. So before we start, make sure you subscribe and share this with a friend and a leader. And yeah, make sure you stay all the way to the end so you can reach out to Kevan and know how to pray. So thanks. Why don't you tell us about who you are and your background?
Okay. So my name's Kevan Grinwis. I've been a pastor for about 20 years. I started out in church ministry as a worship leader, and kind of youth pastor and associate and all that sort of thing. Did all that for about 10 years or so, and then my wife and I, Jamie, planted Downtown Christian Church in 2012, and we've been part of the senior leadership team of that church ever since. So we're involved heavily there. We do a lot of things as far as teaching and leadership, and still very involved in leading worship. I also have a business, a consulting firm. I consult on leadership development and organizational development, different things like that. And I have another job. See, how many jobs do I have now?
I'm trying to keep counting my fingers.
There's at least 3, 4, 5. I don't know. It's like, and I also actually work in tech. I work for a software company. So yeah, I do a lot of different things, and that's fun and keeps me busy. And yeah.
Tell me real quick kind of how that works, because I know it's an interesting thing with how, we'll just abbreviate it, right? DCC, how DCC works, and that you founded it, but you still have jobs, right? A lot of people, I think in America, are used to, you're a lead pastor of a church, there is no other job, that's just what you do, kind of thing, but it's totally different with how DCC works. So how does that work with you? Because like you explained, you've got all these other things you're doing.
That's a good question. So like most things in my life, we really didn't like think of something, go, oh, we should do that. It was more like we were thrust into something, or just kind of, fell sort of, backwards into it. So like when we started DCC, it was very much conceived to be a, traditional model like you just described. Hey, okay, so we're senior leaders now, and this is what we're going to do, full-time ministry and everything else. Well, within a few months, we quickly realized that there's no money in church planting.
Wait, there's not money in church planting?
So if you're
we should probably change
thinking
our
about
plans.
that as a get-rich-quick scheme, trust me.
Text my wife.
It really does. It won't pan out probably. So I went and got a job, a corporate job, doing sales and business development and a lot of other things. And so at that point, then I was working full-time. Full-time corporate jobs they're not 40-hour-a-week jobs. So I'm doing that. At that time, I was still in school. We were pastoring a church and all this other stuff. So really what all that did is forced us to adopt somewhat of an unconventional model, at least in the U.S., in which, we really started to build a leadership team. And we really started to kind of adopt more of a Presbyterian model, where we're more of an elder-led church, so less of a senior pastor with associate pastors and the kind of the structure that maybe a lot of people are familiar with in the evangelical church world. So that's really the model that we've adopted, and because we have a leadership team, really we're able to do a lot of different things. I mean, really, none of our leadership is paid. We have paid staff, but most of our paid staff are people that have, specialized skill sets, or they're administrative, folks or things like that. I mean, our teaching teams all volunteer, our leadership is all volunteer. So, and even by doing that, it's actually freed us up to do a lot of things and keep our overhead low and, kind of do some things a little bit different than, some other church models that we've been a part of. So
that's cool. Do you feel like I know how I feel about this. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this. Do you feel like being able to still be involved in the secular world, right, the business, the professional world and stuff like that, allows you to feel more in touch with or informed on like what's happening with the congregation and being able to speak into stuff a little more?
Or maybe not being as in much of an echo chamber?
There is some of that. I mean, I think, having spent time, kind of in both paradigms, I prefer being, having other things to do, and I prefer being in business and all that sort of stuff. I will also say that I've had a lot of feedback over the years from a lot of folks that were like, man, this really helps me to feel like you as a pastor or as a teacher or whatever are actually relevant.
Mm-hmm.
You get it, I mean, I could tell you, like, Jamie and I talk a lot about, sitting around like at a Bible study or a prayer meeting or whatever, and you get critical and you're like, man, why don't more people come to these things, man? Don't people love Jesus? Like, is everybody a heathen? Like, they don't want to come and pray? Like, what's wrong with people? And then all of a sudden, like, we're thrust into this situation where we're both working full time and all this other stuff. And we're like, no, all of a sudden we realize, no, it's that, people are maybe still working, or maybe they just got out of work and they're hungry, or their kids are hungry, or, there's all these other things that, like, honestly, sometimes I think for me, I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but for me, kind of in that sort of church, you use the word echo chamber, I didn't really see a lot of that. And I think so I think being in that different kind of model and different space has helped us to understand a little bit more where people are at, and maybe be a little bit more, I don't know, just compassionate maybe toward people's lives and what everybody has going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that for me, that echoes into our, industry, where it's like, I've seen so many people that have mixed on one console and one console only because they've only been at their one church. And then they're trying to say, this is the best console in the world. And it's like, well, have you mixed on anything else? Well, no. Then how do you know? Right? Like, that's not something you can speak into. So it's like that, being able to, like, well, how do you know? How is a pastor who is a pastor for 40 hours a week, not in the business world, not in these things, how can you tell me how to operate in that world? Mm-hmm. Right? So you being in that world, I can see why people are like, hey, I feel like you're relevant. I feel like you actually know what we're going through on a day-to-day basis, working potentially for a company that isn't necessarily faith-driven. I know yours is, but I think that adds so much to that kind of thought process.
It kind of puts you on that level, I think, of, the shoulder to shoulder learning, the shoulder to shoulder and in the grind with them kind of type of thing that just, makes it a little bit easier, I think, to receive, like what you're saying as well, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that, honestly, it's important to say this as well. I don't look negatively toward any other models. This is just what we found that really works for us. And honestly, like I said, it wasn't like we conceived of this. We're like, oh, this is a great thing to do. It wasn't idealism. It was pragmatic. It was like we had to do this. Frankly, the bank was going to come and take our house away. I mean, it was like we were facing foreclosure and also, I mean, it was really rough. I mean, we were convinced we would have given up. We were convinced that the Lord had called us to plant a church. And so at that point, it was like, okay, well, if that's the case, the Lord's called us to plant a church, then maybe we have to think differently about some things. Not everybody's in that circumstance. Not everybody's in that situation. And different things work for different people or different churches. It's just really what we've found that works for us. And honestly, for the folks that are part of DCC, for the most part, people really have, gravitated to that model and really like it. So, yeah.
I think that's a good point. How we've learned that, like with YouTube stuff, right? We might do a video that's talking about the same topic as somebody else, but everybody hears from somebody else differently, right? Or they gravitate towards.
Yeah. I hesitated a long time around the channel for doing certain things. Like when I started this channel, I was like, oh, it's all going to be philosophy, right? Like, why do I do stuff the way that I do it? Right? How do you do this? How do you do this? Why do you do this? I'm like, I'm not going to do tutorials and all these kind of stuff. And I remember I kept sending clients other people's tutorials on how to do this thing. And I was like, I should probably just make my own so that I'm getting the traffic. And I'm like, yeah, but there's like 3 guys that do the exact same tutorial, right? And they all have 30, 40, 50,000 views. Why do I need to do this? Well, that's when I made the decision, I have all these clients asking me. So I made my own, posted on the YouTube channel, sent it to those clients. That's all I did. And it's got like 30,000 views on it. Yeah. And it's just the same thought process.
Because it's a different view, but your philosophy is also baked into it, right?
Right. You were worship pastor at a church when you got called to plant this church. So walk us through, what did that look like for you, and some of the, like, we don't need like super detail, but like what did that look like for you guys? Gathering a space, equipment, people, like, how is it just you and your wife singing Kumbaya and you just invited people off the street? Like, what did that look like?
Well, we didn't sing Kumbaya.
Okay.
But it was similar to that. So
Kumbaya.
It was come by us. That means come by me, right?
does,
Okay.
does,
Okay.
Yeah. So there was, so at the beginning of the whole thing, there was 6 of us. So it was literally my wife and I, my folks, and my kids too, but they were pretty little at the time. If you ask them, they'll tell you that they built the church on their own blood, sweat, and tears. I mean,
Your kids?
and they were the setup crew, man. They were everything.
Oh yeah.
So, anyway, so it was my wife and I, my parents, and one other couple. So there were 6 of us, and we started meeting together. And yeah, like it was really pretty ad hoc. Like, we needed a space. We're looking for space. Well, Jamie was working for an organization called Life International, which has a headquarters downtown Grand Rapids, just across the street from the library. In their headquarters, they've got this space downstairs in the basement. It's actually really beautiful. It's actually built as the first synagogue in Grand Rapids. So it's very old history. There's a huge, rich history of this building. Anyways, currently they use it for a prayer space and a chapel. And it's very beautiful. It's very nice. And Kurt, who's the founder and president of Life International, was like, if you guys are planting a church, you should start here. And well, I was like, well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're looking for space. He's like, no. It was funny. It was like, no, you will start here. and I was like, okay, that sounds good.
Do you have a gun in his hand?
The price was right. No, the price was right, and all that sort of stuff. So that's where we started. Was in that building. We got a couple sandwich board signs that we could put out on the sidewalk, and I honestly, like, it was very, very grassroots. We didn't. I don't even know how fast we had a website. I mean, like, it really all happened to us really, really quickly, just because of the circumstances surrounding everything. And so we started meeting, in September of 2012, and, it was Jamie and I. We had I don't even remember where we got the money. I'm sure somebody, donated it or whatever. And we had a keyboard and my acoustic guitar, and we had a small 16 channel. I can't remember what the mixer was, but we had a small little 16 channel mixer that we ran all our stuff from. Now, again, Life International had like an in-house system that we could basically jack into. They didn't have a mixing, they didn't have a mixer or anything like that. Mm. So really, I did all of that stuff, figured out how to mix, and I'm not saying I did it well, but we did okay. And so it was all pretty stripped down: acoustic guitars, keyboard, hand drums, stuff like that. So it was just a small space. But I think when we hit 40, 50 people is when we moved, because we outgrew the space.
How long did that take you?
So it was a couple of years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was about a year and a half, 2 years, and then we moved into the Y. So we were in the downtown Y. Mm-hmm. And there's a community, those community rooms that are in the front when you first come in the big doors. There's like just off to your right, there's these two big community rooms, and they're separated by like one of those slider type wall dividers. So we started out with half the space and met there, and then kept growing, and then we took the wall down and used the whole space. And so we were there at the Y for quite a while.
How much did your production grow from that space, going into that space?
Again, not a whole lot. Where our production would grow is when other people would come around that weren't me. Because like, look, I'm a guitar player and a singer. I'm a worship leader, right? So I'm not a tech guy. I know enough to maybe be dangerous sometimes, but for the most part, like, it's not my wheelhouse. And so, somebody would come around that knew a little bit more, and we go, hey, maybe we should add this, or maybe we should add that. Because we used the onboard, can speakers in the ceiling and just plugged a mixer into it. And again, it was small stuff. It was acoustic, mostly acoustic guitars with a little amplification and keyboards and some hand drums and stuff. I think at one point we had like an electronic drum set, there was some floor wedges in there at one point. Like we didn't have.
Don't tell Jordan.
Floor wedges.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was some floor wedges. We didn't have in-ears or anything like that at that time. But again, as new people would come around, as we continued to grow, somebody would come in and be like, "Hey, we need to overhaul this."
So talk to me about that. The mindset of that. Was that intentional, or was that just it was not in the forethought of your mind because it's not who you are, and it was like you knew, hey, we have to get a certain thing out, but I don't know where to go. I don't really care where to go. My guitar comes through the main system. We're happy with that. Or was it like we don't want tech. Like we just want to be as simple as possible.
No, it wasn't anti-tech at all. It was more like it was so much of what we did, especially back then, was just about, practicality. Yeah. Practically speaking, we could get by with what we were doing and it sounded okay. People weren't complaining that it was too loud. They weren't complaining that it was too soft, and they weren't complaining that it sounded bad. And, a lot of my previous life in church was, all about it sounds, people. I don't know. You guys have been around church enough to know that people just complain, right? Mm-hmm. It's not so often that you hear, "Oh man, it sounds so great in here," especially as a tech person. Definitely as a worship leader, you hear way more often, "It sounds terrible." Mm-hmm. It's too loud. And what people mean by too loud is that there's a frequency that's offensive. It's not usually probably too loud. It's not like you're running at too high of a decibel rating or whatever.
Amen.
I'm sorry, I'm preaching to the choir here.
I appreciate it. Let's let everybody hear.
Literally, no kidding. There was a guy he used to go to our church, not DCC, before DCC, and like at one point he started wearing those like industrial grade.
Oh wow!
Like earphones,
like the 3M noise canceling.
No kidding, like the noise canceling things, just as like out of protest. And I remember it's funny. He came and visited DCC some years later. And his wife had said to me, "Yeah, we really love to make this our home church, but man, the music it's just too loud." I said, "Yeah, well, we really love you guys. Love to have you here, but it's not for everybody."
Yeah.
And it was that thing where it was like, okay, we were just. I am answering your question, I promise.
No, you're good.
We were just
actually leading me into another question.
We were just doing our thing. And it was never on the forefront of my mind. The tech was never on the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
Because again, that's just not my world. You know what I mean? Not that it was never an anti thing. And so when somebody walked in the door, that was their world, and they were passionate about that, and it was what got them out of bed, and they were like, "We should overhaul this because of this and this and this." I was always quick to get on board. It was never an obstinate thing, and honestly, it was never.
I can attest to that.
It was never even a money thing.
Yeah,
it was just a it's not my thing thing.
Yeah,
and so as long as it was me, that was kind of solely responsible for it. Even though we're part of a greater leadership team, I was kind of responsible for those areas. It just never, we didn't do much with it.
Yeah. So this wasn't a question I had, but what you were just talking about, I think that's a great topic to talk about. I want to talk a little bit more about it. Hey, we want to make this our home church, but it's just so darn loud. Not Back to the Future. You're just too darn loud.
Too darn loud.
That was actually Huey Lewis.
I know.
Yeah, I love that.
What a great movie.
That's my honest favorite movies of all time is that trilogy.
Why wouldn't it be?
Hands down.
Yeah.
I know a lot of churches that will dictate, specifically on AV, on audio side of things, like how loud they can mix because one or two people complain. And they chalk that up to if one or two people are complaining, that means there's other people that have a problem with it. And then they will dictate that it needs to be quieter. And now, obviously, like there is a obvious, like it is too loud. But my question to you would be, doing that, you've kind of dealt with that in some level. Like, what do you do in those moments? What's the decision making that goes into, like, how many people complain about something before we actually talk about, like, is this a real thing? Do we need to change this? Yes, we do need to change this. Like, walk me through on a leadership side. When I have a tech that goes, yeah, I've got, these 3 people that come up to me every single Sunday and tell me it's just too darn loud. And it's like, I'm running at 93 dB, which isn't quiet, but it's not loud either, and my pastor's like, well, you should bring it down. You should turn it down. You should turn it down. Do we cater to those people? Do we not cater to those people? Like, what's some of the thought process
depends on how much money they give. I'm sorry.
We're in America. That's how church works here.
That was a bad joke. That was a bad joke. It is unfortunately how that works.
Yeah.
In a lot of places.
Okay.
It's not how it works with us, but it is how it works in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing is that you have to fight through the ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, what people are saying is it's too loud. It's not necessarily too loud.
Yeah.
Something is happening that is offensive in their hearing. And so honestly, to me, the thing is trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've dealt with where there's, elderly people that go, the low end is too loud. Well, it's like they can't hear any top end stuff. The only things that they're hearing is the low end, or it's actually pumping their chest, and they don't like that.
They feel it.
And they like to sit in the front row 6 feet from the subwoofers.
That's an interesting point. So in our next space, so we're at Life International, we moved to the Y. After that, we met at the Goey Center, back behind, on Butterworth there, back behind Grand Valley.
Was that Goey or Goyi?
Goey.
Goey.
Okay. Goey, as in named after Bing Goey,
the
proprietor of said establishment. The same guy owns Eastern Floral, great guy.
Oh, okay.
We worked with him for 5 years as a renter, good people. Anyway, it was a great space. It was an event venue.
Very pretty.
Beautiful. I mean, just gorgeous.
One of those great old factories that got repurposed really well.
It's got that urban industrial vibe, and everything's wood and just, exposed ductwork. It's just really, really great.
Every time you walk past the camera goes.
Oh yeah. The floors were interesting. Yeah.
Those were a little compromised.
That wasn't part of my issue with that building at all.
From an audio standpoint, it was somewhat of a nightmare just because everything was so open and live. And
no acoustic treatment, all just drywall, flat walls, no artwork on anything.
Nothing.
Wood floors, wood ceilings,
but absolutely gorgeous.
But beautiful.
Yeah. So
giant ceiling beams that divided the PA.
Yeah. So when we moved in there, we had those three what are those boxes?
The Meyer boxes.
The Meyer boxes. So we had those 3 big Meyer boxes, and we hung those in the ceiling. And
that was pre-me.
Yeah.
Pre-me?
So we had bought 2 of those at the Y. We actually ran 2 of those in that community room.
Oh wow! Wow, those things are monsters.
Oh, they're big.
Those are like, what are those? 15 inches?
They're huge. Yeah, they're 18 and.
Yeah, we bought them. We bought them used off of
Reverb or something.
Reverb. Yeah. So we had 2 of those, and then we bought a third when we moved into the Goey, and we flew those, and then essentially it was a big rectangle, and so you had those 3 in the center. And then we had some what were they, QSC
the QSC K10 twos.
Just little fill speakers that we hung in the corners. And so what happened was, and again, wasn't necessarily by design, this is just how it happened, and it was really cool the way it worked out. In the center, and the subs were in the center. Mm-hmm. So in the center, like in the center rows, it was somewhat loud. Mm-hmm. But over here in the corners, where those fill speakers were, it was not. So like when people would come to me and say it was too loud, or when I would hear people even say, hey, so-and-so said it was too loud, I'd just say, tell them to sit on the outside. Mm-hmm. And if they don't want to move, then tough. That's their problem. If we've literally created an opportunity for these people to be comfortable, in a way that would absolutely fits the bill. You just described somebody who insists on sitting on the front row.
Yeah.
Then really they're making a decision to put themselves in a place of discomfort.
Right.
And so what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to change everything for the entire group because this one person won't move off the front row?
But when they say if there's one person that's actively saying it, means that there's more people that feel that way.
There could be.
I mean, like, what's the thought process that goes through there? Like, do we actually cater to that?
I never have. We never have. And the only thing I can say is we never have, and we've never had a mass exodus because of it. We've never had 25 people leave and say it's because the sound system was too loud. Again, when people came to us, we met those people with compassion. Mm-hmm. We met them on a level of humanity, realizing that people are going to experience things differently. Just because I like loud music doesn't mean that my dad's going to like loud. And my dad does like loud music, but like somebody else's dad might not. But like just because I like it doesn't mean somebody else is going to, right? So we encountered people on the level of humanity and said, okay, recognizing that they're all going to experience things differently, but there is an option. There is an option over here, and we're not putting you in some annex. We're not sticking you down the street with a live stream and a screen. You know, don't get me started on that. But you're literally in the same space with everybody else.
Yeah,
you're just being encouraged to go over into the spot where it's going to be less, offensive.
Yeah,
in that sense, the sonically. So just sit over there. Well, I don't want to. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's the option that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm recently just in the night of worship a couple weeks ago, someone came back and was like, "Hey, is there anything we do? Can we just turn this down? It's too loud." And I said, "Well, what is it that's too loud to you?" The drums. The drums are too loud. I can't handle the drums.
Man, he was going
smashing on the
crazy.
And I was like, all right.
It was loud. Cool. My watch was yelling at me.
It was telling you that you're in too loud of a space.
So I hope you're wearing, my watch is like, I hope you're wearing hearing protection.
I showed this person, because this is a person that's interested in jumping on volunteering in the audio area. And so I was like, all right, I'll show you what's happening here, with the frequencies and all that kind of stuff if you're interested. Yeah, sure, cool. And I took the drums, all of the cymbal stuff completely out, because the other stuff was fine, right? There were lower frequencies. They had complementary frequencies within there to kind of round everything out. Right. I pull all the cymbals out, hi-hat, overheads, and even the snare, completely out of the mix. I was like, is that better? He's like, it sounds the same. I said, yeah, because they're not really. I was like, you're just hearing the acoustic sound of that drum right now. He's like, he is really happy to be up there hitting those drums, and there's nothing I can do about it. And he's like, well, what if you turn down the main? I was like, well, it's not even in the mains. Trying to explain then like how it works. Like, well, I pulled it out here means it's not in anything else. It's gone entirely. Here, I'll hit the mute. Okay. Yeah, it sounds the same. I was like, yeah.
I love that though. I love that response. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You met somebody on the basis of their humanity, and you took them through a journey and said, look, let me show you.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't take offense.
It's not that simple.
How dare you say that my mix sounds bad?
Right. And I told him straight up, I was like, if I could, I would bring them down, for you, because I would enjoy that as well. I was like, but there's just no way to do it.
And knowing that next time that particular drummer plays, we probably will say something to him. Hey, because
exactly.
I'll tell you the story. I don't remember if you were there, but he literally asked. He's like, "So I've never played in this space before. Like, is there anything I need to know? Do I need to be light? Do I need to play hot rods?" We realized, no, go ahead, have fun.
Yeah, and I've never mixed this drummer.
Was that our curly-haired friend?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. He's a great drummer. Great drummer. And I've never had the opportunity to mix for me, so I have no idea.
For 20 years. He's one of my favorite drummers to play with.
I saw it. I was like, I haven't seen him in forever.
Yeah.
But knowing that now, probably next time we'll be like, hey, remember we told you this? Yeah, maybe just
Yep. And I've only ever had one other person that came back to ask, hey, my girls don't.
We'll give them brushes next time.
My girls really don't like the bass. Is there anything we can do about that? It's like, well, where you're sitting right now and where you sit every week is actually the worst spot to sit if you don't like bass. And I kind of explained waves and where they drop like that. And I was like, and you are right where like the biggest, because of the size sub we have, the distance to where they like to sit, it's like the perfect spot to sit if you love bass. And I was like, so if you come back just 2 rows or move forward 2 rows, you're not going to get hit like that. And it really has to do too with the particular subs we have in the space we're in, the way the room is. If we had something else set up, we could get a little more even
all
coverage.
Those things play together?
Whatever, yeah, they all play together. But I was like, but with the situation that we're in, that's the case. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. I never knew that. And she went back and talked to her daughters, and they're like, well, we don't want to move. And she was like, and she just turned back and was like, whatever. I guess we're sitting here. It doesn't. They don't want to move. It's like, all right. Well, at least they know now. Exactly like you said.
Exactly.
We can move back 2 seats, move forward 2 seats, and we'd be out of the throw. But yeah.
That's good. I know that's a huge problem, and like a lot of people just take offense to it. It's just too darn loud, and it's like, what?
And they almost think that you're mixing to make them go deaf on purpose.
That's the trouble. And like, okay, as a young worship leader, when you're standing up there on Sunday morning, sorry, I'm having a little PTSD. You're standing up there on Sunday morning, and you're getting ready. You're in the zone, and you open up your eyes, and there's a guy wearing 3M headphones.
Yeah.
It rattles you.
Yeah.
It does. It rattles you. And it's really hard to confront that situation in a Christ-like manner.
Yeah.
And yet that's exactly what we're called to do.
Yeah.
Every single time.
And I've had, as an audio engineer, I've had that same type of situation with band members, because I'm all about criticism, right? If you want something to sound a specific way, right, and you as the worship leader go, this is what I want, and you want to come out and like hear how things are going, make sure it's being mixed, the way that it should be being mixed. There's that, and then there's like, I don't trust you, I think you're bad at what you're doing, I'm just gonna like critique you like poorly. I've had worship leaders like that where like they've literally walked out in the crowd to just tell me that I'm doing a bad job. Mm-hmm. And like I will literally mute the PA when they walk out there. And they're like, turn it on. Nope, not until you get back on stage. Like, this isn't how this is going to work. Like, I can take constructive criticism, but that's not what you're giving me. Like, you're just being a jerk. So
that's a tough thing, too, to have. I feel like there has to be a very good relationship between the worship leader and the full AV. Just, it all has to work together, right?
100%.
And I think there's some that have an understanding, like you had to have an understanding of audio to a certain extent because you were mixing and playing and leading and speaking, doing all the things at one time. And there are some people that have gone through that route.
Wearing 17 hats.
Some who started in AV and then were, then got moved into worship or the other way around. I've seen it both ways. But that relationship to be able to understand as well, like, all right, yes, it sounds like that right now, but there's nobody in the room, and I have to think about what this is going to sound like once the room fills up with people. Oh, yeah. It's going to change the sound. So yes, right now, it's an empty room. This sounds like this, and it's not great. People are going to get in here and it's going to change it, but I can't mix for what it sounds like as an empty room, or it's going to be totally wrong for when it's full of people. And
if I had $1 for every time someone was going to me, why do you mix it so loud during practice? Yeah. Back here trying to have a conversation.
Yeah. It's like, well, once we fill this up with people,
not 100 people.
It is not going to. It's not going to be that. It changes everything. It changes the temperature of the room, the humidity of the room, the waves move differently. Everything changes.
Giant sacks of water.
Right. We are giant sacks of a bunch of sacks of water in the pews, or in the movable chairs, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to take into account for as well, and if any audio engineers out there doing this, know the OSHA limits. Understand them. Everybody should know, okay, if they're telling me it's a little bit loud and I realize I'm running 110 dB for 4 hours or whatever, like, okay, yeah, they're right. I am in violation now of OSHA standard, and I do need to bring this down because I'm only allowed so much consecutive time at this dB or that dB, know what rating you should be at and all those things.
Yeah, so let's go there. So you have a consulting like firm, so like obviously you're talking churches and talking about leadership. What would you suggest to the other teams when you say someone comes up to the tech, right? I'm running it where the church wants it. Someone comes up and is like, you have to turn this down right now. OSHA standards are blah, 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 blah. A lot of tech people would probably just bark back at those people. We've had those guys. We've been those guys, right? What do you think for the church as a whole to protect the AV guy and the church and that person, because like the whole goal is to protect everyone, right, as much as we possibly can. What would you suggest is the direction that we should go there? Do we have that person?
I think I know the answer. Stun guns, right?
Oh, there it is.
Tasers for all of the AV. Take him out back, Billy. Am I off? I think I'm off.
do we? Sorry. This guy knows how to derail a thought process. Every podcast that we do together.
You'd think you'd stop inviting him back.
I think you'd think, but what's the suggestion? To kind of try and protect everyone as much as we possibly can. Obviously, not everyone can be 100% protected in every situation, but like, what would you suggest to someone? Is that like, do I send them to you? Right? Like, hey, if you have a problem with the volume, like we're running in this, we all know, right? This is where we want it. If you have a problem with that, go talk to pastor, blah, 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 blah. Or do you just tell your tech guy to turn it down, and then when they walk away, turn it back up? Or like, what's kind of the thought process there? What advice would you give to someone?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to, in some of what Sean was even saying a minute ago, not the thing about the taser, but before that.
Oh, darn.
The thing before that comes back to culture.
Yeah.
And the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the culture that I want in the environment that I'm entrusted to steward, right? Because as a church leader, I'm entrusted to steward this environment. I'm trusted to steward this culture. And for me, as somebody who pastorally oversees, worship and creative arts and all this kind of stuff, I get involved in all these areas. I would absolutely, if I were standing even anywhere remotely close by, and I heard that conversation, I would go over there and I would be like, hey, can we chat for a minute? And I would take that person
to the person that's complaining.
Yeah, I would take that person along, and have a talk with them. The thing is that, the first question would be, is the person running tech outside the parameters of what we've agreed?
Right.
If the answer is no, if the answer to that is no, they're operating within our agreed parameters, then the conversation to that person is, listen, you really can't talk to people that way. Mm-hmm. You just can't come back here and start yelling at people. You just can't do that. That's just not okay. Right. It's just not okay to do that. Like, you wouldn't want me to do that to you.
Right.
You wouldn't want anybody else to do that to your kid.
Yeah.
So why would you do that to someone else? I understand that you're upset, but if you're upset, then let's handle that like, mature adults who are really interested in glorifying Jesus in all the things that we say and do. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, if it were a situation I didn't know about, then yeah, I would absolutely want that tech person to say, hey, you know what? Why don't you just listen? I'll tell you what. Here's what you should do. Right now, I'm not going to change anything. I understand that you're upset. Let me get some. Maybe they can't walk away. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if they can walk away, let me get Kevin, and he'd be happy to talk to you about this. Or let me get somebody else if I'm not around.
Yeah.
There's other leaders. At the end of the day, like our staff, our volunteers, they need to feel safe in what they're doing and what we've agreed. Like, not that they have to like try to defend themselves. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think as a leader, there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility to steward the atmosphere, right? Mm-hmm. To build the culture, but also to protect. Part of being a pastor is being a protector.
Yeah,
it really is. If you're a shepherd, you're a protector. Yeah. The shepherd had a staff and he had a rod. Okay, so the rod was for protection and the staff was for direction. And so any shepherd worth of salt that doesn't have a rod and is not willing to protect isn't much of a shepherd, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So tasers are okay.
Squirt guns.
Squirt guns. Squirt guns. Okay, I'll sell for squirt guns.
But again, how are we protecting? Because that person who's upset also needs to be protected.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So again, back to your point about not getting offended.
Yeah.
We start to act out of offense, and that person's just a troublemaker, or let's just throw them out of the church, or whatever. Like people do this kind of stuff all the time, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, this isn't what we want, but at the end of the day, like you gotta get to the bottom of it. What is this person's major malfunction? Well, my kids don't like the bass. Oh, well, to Sean's point, you could move 2 rows back or 2 rows forward,
right,
and you could avoid that whole uncomfortable thing. Well, I've said something to so-and-so. Okay, you know what? Maybe they just didn't know how to respond, and maybe they didn't respond well because you were yelling at them.
Yeah.
People don't always respond to that. Some people just flat shut down when they start getting yelled at.
Or they get really defensive very, very quickly.
Right.
I think what I really appreciated about that lady talking about her kids was she was able to say the bass versus just too loud. What?
Yeah.
perceived volume and actual, thing that's happening. Like you've said before, maybe it's certain frequencies are
LUFS
different.
Or
we're talking LUFS, dB, dB A weighted, C weighted. What are we talking about here? What's the scale of our,
What frequency specifically is yeah.
Oh, 2.5K?
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's good, and I think that's how I've always kind of felt. When I worked at Disney World, that was kind of like what we were always kind of taught to do is like if you have a guest that has a complaint, that's not just like, oh, hey, like I don't know where to go, or like how do I do this, or it's like you always get the next step up, like take them, find them, leave your post, right? Because it's easier stand there for 20 minutes arguing with a person, or go, hey, let me find someone that that actually can make the decision, because like I am also not in charge of all of this.
Yeah.
Right. So me taking 3 minutes to go and find you and going, here's Kevin, talk to him. If you can convince him, then he'll tell me what to do. I'm going to go back to work, and then Kevin will tell me if if I'm doing something right or wrong. Then it's like I haven't wasted a bunch of time. I'm not upset. That person feels like they've been heard because they've been now taken to the person that can actually make a decision, right? And everyone then feels protected and whatnot. So
well, and organizational clarity comes in a big way in this conversation as well.
Right.
Making sure that everybody understands who to escalate to. Right. I mean, if somebody's upset with a tech person, who is that person's go-to person? Do they understand who that is? Right? I mean, and so I think in a lot of places, it feels like, somebody in that position kind of answers to everyone. Yeah. And that's just not a good place to try to operate.
Then you're just the ping pong.
It's not effective.
All over the place.
It's not very healthy.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of there's a book up on the shelf behind your head, Crucial Confrontations, and it kind of reminds me a lot of that, or something I heard Paul Doyle speak about. But I think
is that a real person? You just make that name up?
That's a real person. He runs a couple of companies out in the Holland area, and he wrote this great thing about the parent, child,
the country,
parent, child, and adult parts of ourselves that we could come at a conversation or confrontation from. And both that book and the speaking thing that he's done in his leadership teachings of kind of, they share that, but they talk about that shared pool of understanding. But I think one of the things that can be really powerful for de-escalation is to create that a little bit with that person that comes up with the complaint, right? And maybe it's not even just a complaint. I mean, it may be a very valid, you yourself recognize it, kind of thing, or whatever is going on. Everybody's ears are bleeding. Shut up. Oh, wait, yeah, you're right. Oh, everybody's ears are actually bleeding out there. Like, maybe we should address.
114 dB is not a good volume.
It's not a good volume. 140, it seems fine to me, Maybe the sound man is deaf. Maybe something needs to change there. But giving, validating or giving understanding to what they're bringing to you can be that first point of de-escalation as well. To say, hey, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Maybe I'll even ask some clarifying questions of like, are you feeling like it's rattling your skull, or do you feel it in your toes? Whatever, because that could help us understand what frequencies maybe are the problem with them, and then and get some clarification on that front. And if you have the ability to step, because like you said, you might not be able to step away. If you can, hey, where are you sitting? Let me come stand by where you're at real quick. And maybe, because some people might come back and they get to the sound where they're like, hey, maybe you changed something. It sounds fine back here. Because the system might not be evenly distributed. And so they might get back to you and be like, oh, wait, I think it's fine. And they go back up and be like, oh, no, it's not fine. And then they don't have an understanding of why does it sound okay here, but sound back there? And,
and then that comes down to even some of the education for the sound guy, right? I've been in spaces where they're pushing it so that they hear it good. And it's like, well, guys, there's a 9 dB drop off from the front row to the back where you're standing. You're trying to make it sound 93 dB where you're sitting, which means it's 100 dB in the front row, and you're killing everyone, right? So, there's definitely a bunch of that. All right, so if we shift gears and go away from the congregation to tech person confrontations and start talking about big things like gear purchases, what's necessary, what's not. I know we kind of precursored to this. We had a conversation. I think I want to talk about that. Like most of the there's like 10-ish thousand churches in the United States, right? And 80-something% of those are under 500 people. And of those churches,
And they're
like,
all in Michigan.
70 plus percent of those are sub 250 people, right? Yeah. Most churches do not have a staff member that's running the technology. Most of those churches don't even have a full-time, worship pastor on staff that is overseeing something. So usually it's pastor wearing multiple hats. With you guys as a church plant, not a church plant, as a mobile church setting up, being smaller and fitting into that category, how did you guys go about making decisions about buying gear? Because I know once you moved into GOE, that's kind of when production started to ramp up a little bit more and more. So yeah, like, how did you guys go about making decisions and kind of that whole process when it was time to buy new gear?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, a lot of those changes were driven, they were driven by different people as we would grow, Mm-hmm. We had a guy come who was kind of oversaw our, creative arts and worship and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, look, we got to get rid of these wedges. We need to go to, an in-ear monitor system. And so we made that change at that time. And I think that was maybe
that was the worship team member that you had, right?
It was a leadership person. Yeah, it was leadership. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that was toward the tail end of the YMCA before we went to the GOE. So we made that shift, started to buy some of those. We bought some of those Meyer boxes. So we kind of had a little upgrade at that point, but we knew we were moving, and so it was sort of we were moving into that space, and so it made sense as we were kind of moving out of one space and into the other. But really, what it came down to at the end of the day, like for me, I don't know what I don't know, right. and so I'm always a firm believer that who here knows?
Right.
Who here knows? Oh, no one? Okay, I guess we're going to have to find someone that does. And even if that costs us a couple of bucks to hire somebody, a consultant or something, to come in and give us the straight dope on what we need, like we need that because we don't know. Because like all of a sudden we're at this glass ceiling from a tech standpoint. We can't improve our quality of audio or any of that kind of stuff. And so I'm not the guy to go. I'm not. What am I going to do? Get on the internet and start researching? I mean, there's words. You're standing out in the hallway and you guys are saying stuff. I don't even know what it is. And I'm like, I love it when you talk nerd. Like
we're all razzed about it.
The
angle of dispersion at a 90/45 causes for a sorry.
No.
Start on that again.
So I've just always been in those situations, just okay. Well, what do you think, and how do we get the right opinions in the room? Now, sometimes that didn't always work out because sometimes you would have somebody who was really like convinced that the way they saw it was the right way to do it. You're talking about the guy who says this is the best mixing board because this is the only thing he's ever mixed on. This is the best. This is the thing we need. And so we also had those situations sometimes, and honestly, one of the I'll call it a leadership failure, even on my part, because I sometimes would let people like that just kind of run, and because we had a lot of very generous donors, like even corporate donors and stuff like that, we could access cash and we were able to upgrade our stuff really quickly. And some of the things that we bought were unnecessary. And so some people that have come in along the way, like, why did we buy this? Well, I don't know, because so-and-so said this or that or the next thing. How would I do it differently now? If I in hindsight, I might get a second opinion. I might go, hey, cool. Well, can we get somebody else's opinion on that too? Because that's a lot of money, or do we really need that? I don't know exactly what the right thing to do is, but like to me, as somebody who doesn't know, I've got to rely on people that do. And I think a lot of times church leaders fall into this trap where they don't know, so they don't do anything, or
Right.
or,
So let me pause you there.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
just because I know that this is going to be a question, right? So you say that you don't know, right? And this person is telling you this is what I think needs to happen.
Yeah.
If you knew someone else that knew, then why would that person not be the one making that decision, or that person that is trying to get you to buy something? Why aren't they just talking to that other person? If you know, does that make sense? What I'm asking there?
No, try
I didn't follow
again.
either.
Sorry. So it's like you have the person that's saying, "Hey, we need to buy this thing."
Yeah.
Right. You don't really know.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're going to get a second opinion in hindsight, who are you getting that second opinion from? And if that second opinion person is available to you, why is that person not already involved in that situation?
Okay. Well, I don't know that they were available to me in that situation originally, right?
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
so it wasn't necessarily, or to be honest, sometimes that's where I'll call that a leadership failure. That we just get focused and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds right. Let's do that. Let's just raise that money. And what's that? $10,000? Sure. Let's get that done. So there's a variety of reasons why you might do that. But I think the thing is to slow down, pump the brakes and go, okay, if I've got somebody that's just sort of has a blank check, how do we put good fences?
Right.
How do we put good fences around that person? Not to limit them, not to limit their creativity, because especially when people are passionate, you want to fuel that. You want to you want to fan those flames, but you still need to create fences for people to kind of stay in and guidelines. Yeah. And ultimately, for me, the budgeting decisions and the financial decisions came to me, and we've got a financial team that makes those kinds of calls and everything else. I don't do it by myself, but as the person that would go to that group, then I've got to understand, like, hey, this is money, we need to spend it. Where would I do that differently? I'd probably be like, hey, and by the way, and we do actually nowadays we actually have actual policies about this. Mm-hmm. Back then it was kind of more like the Wild West. Yeah,
definitely. You live and learn, right?
But yeah, you do. I mean, most policies are created out of a situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the situations that I've been involved in, or not just our church, but in other churches, it's very rare do I find anything that is ever like malicious, right?
Oh, yeah.
Usually it's like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Right? Hey, I want to do this thing and I'm trying to figure it out. The internet says this, or my friend says I should do this, right? And maybe that's buying something that's kind of expensive that ends up not working out the way we want it to work, right? I think that was a majority of the things that we had was things just didn't work the way we thought that they would work, and we were just trying to figure stuff out. We've all been there. Mm-hmm. I think that it's more of that question of just like, how do we like fine tune that? Because blind trust can be dangerous, but at the same time, you don't want to like second guess everything, because then there's no trust.
Yeah, and people feel disempowered, right?
Exactly.
Or then all of a sudden a pandemic hits.
Right.
Which we experienced. Here we are, it's 2020, and we're operating out of this space in the GOE Center, and one day to the next, there's all these government things and different things coming out, and
the first 3 months everything changed, hourly.
Yeah.
I was literally recording a video every single week, updating the church.
Yeah.
Here's what's going on. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, we were doing so many things that, like, even now I think are weird. I look back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe we did that. That's so strange. It feels surreal. It's like watching a movie of somebody else's life. You know what I mean? Like when I think back about it. But then all of a sudden we got to go from there. We weren't live streaming.
Yeah.
We were. I mean, I think in 2020. At that time, just before COVID, we were probably 150, 175 people on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And so like we weren't multicam. None of that stuff was on our radar. And to be honest with you, live streaming was never really all that interesting to me.
That was one of my other questions that I had.
We can get into that. But we had to go from nothing to something. Overnight.
Yeah.
Literally, like, I think it was 4 days. And so the fact that we were able to go from nothing to something in 4 days and still put out a live stream church broadcast, which happened from my living room, We literally moved all the band stuff.
Yeah.
Our Midas board onto my kitchen table. The drum set was in the living room. I mean, we even had, like at some point, we even had like little like up lights and all kinds of stuff in there. And we did that for probably.
Are those? I think those services are still on the YouTube channel. We should see if we can.
We should go back and watch
They're
them.
blowing up. Give everybody a little view of what that looks like.
There was a, like, I think the first Sunday, the clicks and the cues in the in-ears went through the live
I
broadcast.
remember that. Yeah.
You know, so there was just so many crazy things that happened.
I remember sending texts. Hey, I can hear the cues.
Yeah.
Hey, I can hear the
Yeah,
click.
and I was literally getting text messages from people who were watching going, now I know I feel like I'm in the band, you know? I'm like, oh my gosh, so terrible. But we were trying to learn so quickly.
Yeah.
And part of that was we needed gear.
Right.
And we needed gear like right now.
Yeah. You and every other church in America.
Right.
Yeah.
All at the
And
same
so-
time.
and
All
so
at
it's
the
like,
same time.
Order.
I can only imagine people made a lot of money off that whole situation, and you know, I mean, whatever, good for them. But like, you know, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And so in that mad gold rush type you know vibe,
Yeah.
you know, we bought stuff I'm sure that we didn't need.
Yeah. And I think that situation is a little bit different than a majority of things, because I feel like I've had a lot of conversations where they were like, well, we bought this, just because we were trying to figure it out. And like you said, like we had 4 days to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So we just got online and started hitting order from Sweetwater, right? And it was like we found out that we didn't need half of it, you know, but it was like we didn't know that because like we don't have a full video team,
Yeah.
right? We've never live streamed before, you know, so it's like I get that kind of thing. I think more so my thought and question was outside of that situation, you know, where it's like we're trying to improve something, we're trying to change something, make it cooler or different, make it better, you know, like what checks and balances have you put in place now to prevent massive spending on something that, oh, we were misled or I misunderstood what we needed.
Great.
You know,
Yeah.
because I've done that too. I've bought something and gone, oh, that's not what I needed. That didn't work the way I thought it was going to work.
For me personally, and this is just a general leadership growth thing for me, I ask way more questions than I ever used to. I mean,
Do you have like a set of questions that are like kind of like your base questions that you ask, and then you have like specific questions depending on the system? Or
I think one of the big questions I always ask is, what's our why? What's the win here? What are we doing? Why are we trying to do this?
yeah,
We just want to make it better.
In what way?
Yeah, but why?
Because
why do we
tasers
want
are
this?
cool.
And how does this fundamentally serve our overall why? If our overall why is a church, our why.
Could we role play real quick?
If you do, I have to dress up.
No,
I'm
you
gonna
can just
sneak
exactly.
out.
I want to like walk through a little bit of this. You can join in if you'd like.
Let's do it.
Who am I?
So,
You're
hey,
you.
we want to.
okay.
We're running all of our audio for live stream off of an aux or a matrix from our console. So I really want to buy another console to run broadcast audio off of. It's going to cost us like $5,000 to do that. Can we do this?
Okay? So you want to buy a whole console?
Yeah, I want to buy a new soundboard, a second one.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think the first question would be, what are we trying to achieve with that? What's the win?
Yeah, I think that so like my colleague here, he wants to start running broadcast audio instead of just having like a dump of our main left right in. So what you were saying, it would bring us more balance.
Yeah, I'll be louder. Oh wait. Oh, you want me to be serious about it?
Yes.
Sorry.
You could be serious and
I
funny.
like to be the goofy guy.
Just did my gym. Look at the camera.
Every good show has a straight man and a funny man.
You know, I thought we were gonna do some Bud Abbott, Lou Costello
Yeah.
kind of thing going
Who's
on
on
here.
first?
Who's yeah?
I just showed my kids that last week. They were so
What a great
confused.
sketch. Yeah. Okay. So, I can speak very easily to this scenario. Well, with some of the unique challenges that we face in our current sanctuary, with the material of the walls, the speakers being an incorrect dispersion pattern for the building, and what that's doing, we're having to EQ things very strangely to sound good with inside the sanctuary and to mitigate some things that even doing our scans of the room aren't able to correct because of the boxes we're using. So a separate mixer would allow for us to have a completely different EQ for every input, proper gain structure, things of that nature, so that the sound that's going out to the live stream will start to have that more full-bodied sound and everything, and not be essentially what we'd call that dry, dump mix that I can't change. Plus, if I need to change something for live stream right now, it affects your guys' in-ears for worship. And so I want to be able to control that separate so that it doesn't have the negative effects on everything else.
So can I have $5,000?
Yeah, well, maybe, but I still don't know that we got to the why. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I get all what you just said, and that makes a lot of sense. So basically what you're saying is you're limited in your ability to produce the audio for the live stream well because it's basically a straight dump. And forgive me, I'm not a tech person, right? So I'm just trying to I need to make sure that I understand the why, because I've got to go to other people and say, hey, we want to spend, and I'll say we not, these guys, we want to spend $5,000.
These jokers over here.
These jokers want to spend, we want to spend $5,000. And if so that's why I need to understand it. So I get that piece, but why?
Yeah. So if we were to say, we've noticed the X percentage of, or we have this many viewers, right, that are watching consistently, and perhaps we've received complaints about the audio being bad. Hey, I really only want to tune in when it comes to the speaking portion because I just I miss being a part of worship, but I just can't take it. It just doesn't sound great. Or we're trying to grow the online audience.
Yeah,
I'd have to know what the...
Yeah, I was going to say, we have about 75 people that watch consistently on Sunday morning. Our church is a church of 500 people, so it's a pretty good chunk, comparatively. And when we watch online, I don't hear any drums because the drums are so loud in the main sanctuary because of the way that our PA is set up. And I know that financially we don't have the money to completely redesign all the acoustic treatment in the room and get a new PA. There's a lot that goes into that. So in order to enhance what we're doing on our live stream for the 75 people that consistently watch us, I want to be able to give them the best experience that we possibly can with audio, especially during the worship, because there's already a disconnect when you're watching worship on TV at your house. And so it's if we can make that less of a disconnect, I feel like the spending of $5,000 is worth it to be able to potentially get more people to want to watch it, or at least settle the 75 people that are watching it, have a better church experience that they're watching.
Yeah. And I think as well, it was always said before that the website is kind of that digital front door and first impression that a lot of people get of churches. Now that's YouTube. So if the church is on YouTube, that's where people are going to find it. That's what they're going to watch, and that's their first experience of it. And so we really just want to make what people are experiencing online that much closer to what they'd experience in person to kind of give them that impression.
So can I have $5,000?
Well, I guess the other question that we have to ask, and again, maybe this isn't a conversation for us to ask this question. Maybe this is a conversation for the finance team to ask, right? So I get why you want the money, and I understand how it feeds the why of the live stream and how it feeds the why of the production team.
Yeah.
I get that, and it makes sense. The question I think that we have to ask is how does spending this money, because we're going to have to fundraise this, so we're going to have to figure out where to get it from. It's not budgeted, right?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
So maybe it's something that we don't do. Maybe it's a building improvement that we're not going to be able to make. So we're going to have to buy this instead, right? So the question that we have to ask is how does this feed our why?
Right.
How does it improving the live stream?
The why of the church.
Yeah.
Our overall why. Our overall why.
Yeah.
How does improving the live stream experience of the church of 75 people?
Right.
How does it, or does it at all?
Right.
And that's a question that we're going to have to ask. So I can't answer your question whether you can have $5,000 yet, but I will take it to the next. I will take it to the next.
I've convinced you
step.
Now,
Well, you convinced me of why you believe it's a good expenditure.
Okay.
Now, there's still another step.
Yeah, for sure.
So even if we go, yeah, okay, we'll spend money on this, I'm not convinced that the $5,000 is the right spend. I mean, how many quotes did you get? How much different gear did you look at?
Right.
How many second opinions did you get? Who did you talk to? Because we have to talk through that too. So okay, first we go, does this pass
the thought process?
First of all, does it pass the stink test?
Yeah.
Right? That's the first question. Does it make sense to even go down this road? And if we do, okay, do we have the money or can we come up with it? And do the people that oversee finances, are they on board?
Yeah.
Does it feed the overall why? But then if we go, okay, yeah, all that seems good, we still have to ask the question of, is that thing, that board that you're looking at, that's $4,979.95.
Right.
Is it the right one?
Yeah.
Right.
And it has more flashing lights on it.
Yeah,
And-
which
which
that
is
always
better for our church Instagram
impresses me.
posts, makes it look more impressive. So can we have $5,000? No. So I think
I think that's good.
what you said comes in. So I've been trying to limit my answers to what I've heard most tech people put out there, right?
Yeah.
Normally what I always like to do is okay, let me pull up the church mission statement and vision and look at that before I even go and ask and say, hey, is this something, can we buy this? And go, does anything that this is going to do for me fit into this? And if it does, I need to highlight it as such and say, hey, because this is a part of our mission statement, this is how I feel. It's not going to resonate with everybody necessarily, and I still need to understand that as the tech person, right?
Yeah.
To say, hey, look, just because I think it's going to do this, I don't necessarily know that God hasn't been working in your heart on something else that you're like, you know what, I actually feel like God's wanting DCC to go, this direction. And I need to be open to hear what that is as well. There's obviously a lot of transparency, and that's great. So it's not usually that kind of question, but there can be in certain areas. I've certainly been in places where there are.
I just dealt with this with a client, and honestly, they took it in an approach that I don't know how I've never thought of this. Because when they were like, well, this is they told me what they went through. And I was like, man, how have I never really thought about it that way? That's a great way to think about this. They had a part for their live stream system fail, and it was $3,500 to get them back up and running. And they were like, well, do we want to spend $3,500 to keep live stream going? Is live stream important enough to us that we need that? And they talked amongst themselves, and they were like, well, we actually have 4 students that have started to pay attention and want to be in our church service every Sunday because they like to run that equipment. And we feel like spending $3,500 is worth the investment to keep those 4 younger kids invested in our church. And so we're going to spend that money. And I was like, that's a great thought process. That's not tech related at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, in
more heart.
And I think that's what I was trying to say in what I was driving at with the why question is exactly that.
Yeah.
I get the tech. I get the tech side of it. I get the fact that, and we've gone through this as a church, right?
Yep.
In various iterations and forms, and some were more expensive than others.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, why are we even live streaming?
Right.
We have to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings me to my next question, because I think that's a great segue.
Right, but real quick, we'll get. But why are we even live streaming? And if we've identified that, then we can hold the fact that we want to give a better experience to the 75 people up against that.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that passes the stink test, then we can hold that up against the greater, whatever global why. But we should have already done that.
Right.
We should have already done that when we asked ourselves why we're live streaming, which is your segue.
Right. And that's the thing. So for you were anti-live streaming at our church for the first huge chunk. And because of the board-driven decisions that get made, that as a board, you guys decided that we were going to do this long term after COVID, correct? Or am I misinterpreting what happened?
Let me say it this way.
I wasn't there, so I'm out of this.
I have a theological problem
Okay.
with live streaming as a substitute for church.
Okay, I agree with you.
It is a basic theological problem.
Yeah.
That just comes back to the fact that church is a gathering. The word ecclesia, which is the Greek, right, that we find in the New Testament, is a group of people that are called out from the larger populace and called together.
Yeah.
Right? Called out and called together for a specific purpose. And in this specific situation, it's to worship Jesus.
Right.
Okay? I really haven't been able to figure out how that's possible on live stream. So if we're live streaming as a substitute for church, then I have a basic theological problem with it. I certainly don't prefer it.
Yeah.
I'm not against.
Statistically, most people would agree with you. They don't prefer it. They prefer being in person.
That's because that's church.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Church is when we're together. It's like if I said, "Hey, do you want to go get a cup of coffee?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure. That's great." And we went down to the coffee shop, and we sat at separate tables.
And I called you
and drank coffee. And yeah, maybe we would FaceTime.
Oh, I got an idea for a great cinema piece now.
Is it really
Right.
is it really the same thing?
So my question to you is not necessarily like going down that path, because we've had that conversation on this podcast. I've sent those conversations to you. I think my question more is, as someone who was anti it, because that was the feeling that it was for, right? Was a substitute.
Well, it was
because coming out of COVID, that was the feeling that a lot of people had. They don't want to come out of their house.
That's why we started to do it, right? We started to do it because we couldn't do the other.
Right.
We couldn't bring everyone together.
Right.
And so that's why we started to live stream. So then in your mind, you're like, okay, well, this must be why we continue to do it. Now, for me, just to take you on that journey for a quick second, the reason why we've continued to do it, and yes, there are others that are part of our leadership team that are more passionate about it than I am.
Yeah.
I go back and forth, okay? But the biggest reason why we've continued to do it is for two reasons. Number one, Sean mentioned that the website used to be your front door, but it's not so much anymore. Now it's YouTube, right? And so our live stream drives our YouTube in a big way, right? So that's one reason. Is one of the biggest ways that people look for a new church nowadays. But the other thing is that there are still some people that are unable, to be in person with us on Sunday morning. And so for us at this point, it is money that we've already spent.
Yeah.
We're not, again, if we had to dump 3,500 or 10,000 or 15,000 into it, we'd be having a really different, we'd be having a really different conversation, because it'd be like, hey, is this investment is this really worth it? We'd have to have that conversation.
That's not the direction I was going with that question, but my direction.
I like it.
No, that's all good. I'm glad we had that conversation. I will frame the question now. How do you work in an environment with, for you guys, it was you as leadership that was resistant to it because of, rightfully so, right? And you have a leadership team that made the decision to keep going, which you respected clearly because of, they had their reasons. How do you work inside of that, supporting that, because that's the decision the church has made, on your level as leadership, or even on the tech side? If I'm coming to you saying, I want to live stream, and you and the leadership tell me no, how do I interact with that? Or I'm now being told to do something I don't want to do, right? Because I don't want to live stream as the tech person because it adds so much extra to me. I don't feel like it's really, like whatever the reasons to not do it may be. But you as my leader are saying, no, that's how we're going to get more people to come in the door, whatever. How do you work inside of that environment when you're having to do and support the mission, vision of something on not a theological side of things, but on a technological side of things that you either disagree with or don't like?
That's a really big question.
It was big.
I love it. It's great. It's an amazing question.
And I ask that because I know that I've been involved in that.
Yeah.
I've wanted to do something that I've been told no. Right. And a lot of times I never got explanation as to why. or I've been told that I have to do something that I'm like, why are we doing this?
Right. So I'm going to take that in pieces. So the way that our leadership model works, okay, functionally, we do everything together or we don't do it. So had I been a dissenter, an adamant dissenter against live streaming, we would have had to have a different conversation. Not because it's me and my wife and I planted the church, but because that's how our leadership model works.
Right.
We do it together or we don't do it. Now that requires a lot of things in order for that to function. That requires a level of trust. That requires a lot of robust dialogue. That requires healthy confrontation.
Being humble.
It requires being humble. And one of the biggest things that it requires is choosing to not lead from preference. Mm-hmm. And I think this is one of the biggest things that people struggle with as leaders, is that they prefer something or they don't. Guys, it doesn't matter what I prefer. It matters what's good.
Yeah.
It matters, honestly, like you think about it, like even leading your family, you know, as a father, as a dad, whatever, like it doesn't matter to me if I prefer this movie or that movie, if the best way that I can love my family right now is to watch that movie.
Right.
You know, it really comes down, you said humility, that's a great way to say it. It really, I like that word preference, because I think so many times we gravitate to the things that we prefer, the things that we like, or the things that we dislike.
Right.
I don't like the idea, like it was hard for me to get over the idea that there's cameras. Mm. You know, there's just different things I didn't prefer. There was some people that, like, when we went to live streaming, they wouldn't, like worship leaders that were just like, I can't.
Yeah.
You know, again, like, I'm not saying that they were right, wrong, or otherwise.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They had a preference issue. As a leader in that sense, like the question that you're asking, the big question you're asking, we have got to choose to lay that stuff down and go, okay, what's really the best thing? And if you're coming to me as a tech person, I don't care what level of leadership I'm in, when you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
And if I'm unwilling to be humble enough to listen, or to listen even to the other leaders that I'm that are part of this senior leadership team, when they're like, man, you really aren't seeing this right.
Yeah. Then
it's not going to work. That whole we do it together or not at all thing is not going to work. This is going to break down really, really quick.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I think we've even, you know, that's the way we work together, but we've even really tried to adopt that same methodology as it relates to the people that we work with, whether it's staff or volunteers. Like we've had volunteers that just get really upset over, well, I think we should do this, and it's like, you know what, we're not going to go that direction, you know. But there always has to be a dialogue. Yeah. You know, and if you can take people through that conversation and actually get them to the place, whether we agree 100% or not, at the end of the day, it's not about consensus. Leading from consensus is a terrible way to lead.
Yeah.
But getting unity doesn't require consensus.
Right.
Unity requires alignment around something, and that alignment could be nothing more than I trust you.
Yeah.
I don't see it, and frankly, I don't know how I can agree with. I don't see it, but I trust you so deeply.
Yeah.
That I'm in.
Do you feel like a majority of people that get told no, or like not no, but like get told to do something against what they want to do, whether that be told to do something or to not do something, do you feel like the breakdown there becomes because people think that they're against you? Like that, like if I said, hey Kevin, I want to live stream, and you said no, we're not going to do that, well then now I feel like you're against me because you don't want to do my idea. Or if vice versa, right? I don't want to live stream, and you're telling me to live stream, and I now feel like you're against me. Do you feel like a lot of things are that way because of bad communication? Because I know for me, at one of the churches I was on staff at, it felt like we weren't doing anything. And it was like every time I came up with an idea to do something, It was no. Okay, well, it doesn't have to be my idea. What are we doing? I want to do something, right? I want to be able to support the goal. Like those people that I'm talking about, like, do you feel like they are in that same position most of the time? Like they want to support the goal and they're just coming up with ideas. And I guess maybe this is a little scattered, but
no, I get what you're asking. I get what you're asking. I think, I mean, to answer your first question, I think that in some ways it comes back to a lack of trust. Yeah, it's bad communication for sure. But if you and I have relational capital built up, if I've built up relational capital with you, meaning that I've honored you. You feel like you're treated with dignity. You feel like your ideas aren't blown off. You feel like you're respected. You feel like you're being actively empowered. I mean, we could go on this list, right? I'm gonna have a tank of relational capital built up with you.
Right.
And when you come to me and say, I want to do this, and I say, you know what, I don't know if that's the right thing to do right now. It's going to be really different to hear than if you have none of that.
Right.
Because all I've ever done is, you're an employee, and I say this and you do that, and you just go here and push those buttons, and I'm over there.
Stamp these widgets.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cult.
One of the things I said at that church that I was on staff at, I got told no one time, and I was like, okay, then what are we doing? I would really like to understand why we can't do this. Right? This is like the 7,000th idea that I've come up with. It doesn't feel like we're doing anything. I want to support what we're doing. Are we not doing this because there's something else you guys want to do? You don't feel like it matches the mission and the goal of what we're trying to do? Like, why are we saying no? Because I can get behind no if it makes sense why you're saying no.
So the root issue in that context, for whatever reason, to me, it's just outside looking in, you're in a position where you don't feel like you're contributing to the big picture, to the big why, to the reason why we're all here. Yeah. And because we're not doing anything. What does that mean? It means you're not contributing. That's what you're really trying to say. Yeah. And that is a fundamental responsibility of leadership, to inspire everybody. Yeah. And that doesn't I mean, leadership. I was literally writing this just a few minutes ago before I came. A lot of times we think that being a leader means being a good leader means being able to get people from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. That's leadership, or getting people to achieve a goal or what have you. And that's leadership, but I wouldn't call that good leadership. Good leadership is getting people from point A to point B, and when they get to point B, they're better than they were when they left point A. Mm. They're excited along the journey because they understand how every single person in this group is contributing to the greater sense of why we need to get to point B. Why are we even going to point B? I don't know. It's just where we're going. Because that's what I said, because I'm the leader. Yeah. It's trash. Yeah. We've got to stop doing these kinds of things. It's disempowering, and it's not helpful.
Not healthy.
I think that really resonates strong with me too. What you're talking about is growth, not just on X, but on Y, right? Like, and literally Y, WHY if we want to at this point. But like, I'm not just as a leader taking you from here to here, right? Point A to B on this axis of the graph, but I'm also taking you this way. Right. So you understand the why healthier. And you had mentioned earlier establishing what that box is essentially, right? When you understand what the guidelines are, it's a lot easier to think about either what's outside the box I can pull in, or what are my limitations when I'm going through this. And we've all heard it in organizations, both in churches and in professional or secular, however you want to label that type of thing, where somebody asks, hey, can I do this type of thing? No. Okay, why? Well, listen, I'm your superior. I'm your leader. I shouldn't have to tell you why. I just need you to listen. I just need you to take the no and go. Well, you're not helping them grow.
Well, and sometimes
you're not helping them understand.
I think the difficulty that I've had with that is like sometimes, like as a parent, sometimes my no is no because I'm dad, right? But the key thing is sometimes, right? Not every single time, right? If I just told my kid no on every single thing that they were about to do or trying to do or doing that was wrong and never gave them any sort of explanation or alternatives, right? Yeah. Don't hit your brother with that baseball bat. Hit the floor with the baseball bat because you're upset, right? Get that out of there. If I just say no, like that doesn't
not the floor where the vase is sitting. The floor over here where the vase is not. Well, I think every no and even every yes is a teachable or learning moment, right? For that graph, like we were talking about, I'm taking you from here to here, but also up to here in that understanding. And so with every no, if I'm able to say to you, no, but let's look at it within the context of that box with the mission statement, the vision, whatever that is. And let's see where that lands in here. And this is why then that's now not a no. But that informs your further thought process on other areas of like, oh, well then maybe, okay, I've got these other ideas that could, I can kind of think about and mull over and build on to present, this other idea. And yeah, I think that's really powerful.
Part of it goes back to the relational capital that you have banked up, right? So take the conversation with your kids, right? So not every time do you say no, and the reason is because I'm your dad. So more often than not, maybe it's no, and let me take you on a little journey and explain why. Yeah. Let me take out a few more notches on that graph.
Yeah. Kids stepping out in the middle of the road is not the moment for the stop.
It's not the time.
Why? Because there's a red SUV.
Yeah. So,
Sorry. In one of the books I read, Loving Your Children on Purpose, like it's all about like letting kids make decisions and stuff like that. And they're like, but there's certain decisions they don't get to make. Blood in body, blood out of body, not a decision they get to make.
Right. Exactly. So, but because you're willing to go on that journey with them, 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, you've banked up that relational capital. So when you do say no because I'm dad, then you're really just pulling out of that bank.
Yeah, trust factor's there.
And it makes that conversation just that much easier. It's, and as leaders in organizations, a lot of times people will say things like, man, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to sit down and explain every single time somebody comes to me and asks, can we do this and can we do that? Sometimes I'm just going to have to, and I just politely have to disagree with that. Yeah. You do have time for that because your responsibility is, again, not just to take people from point A to point B, like you said, on a linear path, but also to help them to grow as people. And if we as leaders can make our how do I say this? There's a philosopher, writer, I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember, the name is eluding me. Maybe I can get it to you later if you want. But
we'll throw it up as a super.
He writes he writes about this idea. There's 2 ways that humans interact with the people around them: I, it, or I, thou. And 2 different ways of interacting with the people around you. I, it being, subject to object. I, thou being subject to subject. If we can, as leaders, interact with the people that we work with in more of an I, thou methodology, where it's subject to subject, and we're humanizing the people that we're with and understanding, man, we wouldn't want to be treated like that. Right. I wouldn't want somebody to say no just because. In fact, I've quit places before for exactly that reason. If somebody ever, I've only a handful of times I ever had somebody say that to me, and it just never really sat well with me. I'm like, no, I don't want to be in this environment. Yeah. I'm not saying I don't respect this person's authority, because I do. Yeah. I'm not saying I don't respect even the hierarchy and the structure of leadership, because I do. Yeah. I believe that God made things to be decent and in order. God put authority in place and leadership, all stuff, and these are godly and Christ-like principles. But it doesn't mean that we should sit in those places and just say, no, do this because I said. That's, again, subject to object, in the sense where we're literally treating people like chess pieces and moving around the board, and it's just not humanizing. Yeah. It's dehumanizing.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of that Paul Doyle guy, the name you think I made up.
Oh, the guy from Holland?
Yeah, the guy from Holland.
The Netherlands?
Are you talking like adult to adult, parent to adult, or child to, like how's the conversation coming at, what am I, what am I doing this? And in those things that you can say that can hook the child in somebody or the parent or, kind of thing, but trying to get everything so it's that adult to adult conversation. And in that kind of
that's good.
vein.
We'll wrap up with this. What's one piece of advice you would give to people listening?
Yeah. This is just fresh for me. And we've touched on it a lot of times, just talking, but start with why. I didn't make that up. I got it from, Simon Sinek has a book, Start From Why, but whether you like that or not, that's irrelevant. It's a great idea. It's a great principle. Define the why.
Yeah.
Why are you here? Why did you get out of bed this morning? Why do you exist?
Yeah.
Whether you're a tech director, whether you're an audio guy, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a worship leader, all this stuff, these are what's. These are platforms, and platforms come and go. They change.
Yeah.
I do a lot of different things. I got a lot of different jobs. We were joking about that earlier. But in every single one of those jobs, my why is consistent. Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? I'm here to be the most authentic, healthy version of myself that I possibly can be and help other people do the same. And that's true as a pastor. That's true as a business coach. That's true as a dad. That's true as a husband. That's true as a business development guy, when I'm writing marketing pieces, whatever it is, that why remains consistent. And so I think we lose it. We get so focused on the what. Well, I'm the tech guy. That's cool. That's awesome. Good for you. I'm excited about that. And I hope you are too. But why?
Yeah.
Why are you the tech guy? Why are you here?
Yeah.
Because again, it just reframes the whole conversation. And again, when you start to think in those concepts, then even those leader, how do we disagree well?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can get around why. Because maybe that $5,000 soundboard is a what.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hold true with the why.
Right.
And we can unify around that. Again, unity is not consensus. It's not homogeny. It's unity. It's something very different. It's something that God created. It's an amazing thing. I mean, and you take the Trinity as the ultimate picture of unity, right? Father, Son, and Spirit. Pros is what John says, turn toward one another from eternity. I don't mean to get all theological, but this is the ultimate picture of unity. And in that, it's not homogeny. There's diversity in the Trinity, in the Godhead, And so if we start with why, then we can get there.
Yeah, love it.
That's very cool.
How can people reach out to you for your consulting stuff?
Website, idoconsultants.com. EIDO consultants.com. It's probably the easiest way. LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. Probably my email's on our church website, dccgr.org. I mean, there's tons of ways.
They all get to you in
call
some
my
way,
cell
shape, or form.
phone. Yeah, whatever. Smoke signal.
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll get back to you in 6 months.
Send me a woof.
Is that still a thing?
Woof?
Yeah.
No, that was an office. That was on The Office.
Oh my gosh, that's why.
No,
okay.
wasn't there something else that was called that though?
No, it was an office joke.
Oh man, now I feel stupid. I feel like that was a real thing.
No,
Man,
Like
maybe
fetch and like
in my head, The Office is real. It
it is
exists.
real.
It is real.
It is real. It's real to me.
They're so convincing.
very close to reality sometimes. It's kind of like how Spinal Tap is one of the best movies ever made about what it's like to be on the road in the band.
to 11.
I think with the why, that's probably a good spot to end it there. With your why, I've always looked at the scripture that says, again, I say, if the trumpet does not sound a clear sound, who will get ready for battle? And that's always been my thing for film production that I work in, for doing the audio stuff, for everything. It's like, I want the clearest signal possible. The word is what's important here. If people aren't hearing it, it's one thing to be loud. It's another to be clear. And so trying to put all that together is,
Yeah.
That's
it's
awesome.
always been my why.
That's awesome.
Well, man, would you do us a favor and pray over our production teams and stuff like that are listening to this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, God, we just thank you so much for your goodness and your kindness. Jesus, we just love you and adore you. Specifically, like, Lord, I think of all of our sisters and brothers in the tech world that work in production and the church environments and beyond, Lord, and just thank you for the work that you have called them to. Thank you for that they get to operate in. Lord, I just pray that you would just help each and every person keep that why in the forefront of their mind as they put their hand, whether it's to that mixing console or whatever it is they're doing, Lord, that as they put their hand to that plow that's in front of them, they keep that why in mind. Whatever that is, whatever the thing is that you've deposited in their hearts, that is the thing that gets them out of the bed in the morning. And ultimately, God, that we would glorify you in everything that we do, whether it's specifically in a Sunday morning church environment or whether it's, Lord, wherever it is, God, that we would, as your kids, that we would reflect you just like a two-way mirror, that we would stand in that place and that we would reflect your glory to this creation that you have called us to be stewards over, and that we would reflect back the praises of that same creation back to you. And Lord, that we would just operate well in that space, that ultimately, Jesus, that your name would be made big in all the things that we say and do. And Lord, we just thank you. We thank you for your goodness to us and your kindness to us, your mercy and your love, your grace. And just pray all of this in the wonderful name of Jesus, our Lord. Amen.
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 Well, Kevan, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate the time. It was a long podcast, but it was well worth it. And
I feel like we need to have you on again.
I was going to say, there's like 7 other questions I feel like I want to have a
as
conversation
you're talking,
with
I'm
you.
like, now I can think of something else that we could talk about. Oh, there's something else we could talk about.
Well, the great thing is he's local, so
yeah, I know.
You guys know to get hold of me.
We know this guy.
well, know him. All
Cool.
right, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks.